Everybody, Kevin McFarland here, and if you're like me, you are gearing up to go to AOEN 19, the National Emergency Nursing Conference. And in this special episode of The Art of Emergency Nursing, I have some tips, some tricks, and some advice to help you maximize your time at AOEN 19. And those tips are coming up right now.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement, because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
If you're lucky enough to be heading to AOEN 19 in Austin this week, then this podcast is going to help you get ready for that conference, help you maximize your time and energy at that conference, and maximize the benefit overall. Now, one of the first questions I'm always asked is, Kevin, why do I want to go to a national conference? And what I can tell you is nothing will recharge your career batteries. You know that's what we're all about here. But nothing will recharge your career batteries like going to a conference and spending a week with 2,000-3,000 of your peers. People who think like you, people who are like you, people who have the same problems you have. There's nothing more rewarding than going to a professional emergency nursing conference. My first national conference was in Baltimore at ENA in 2009. And from that moment on, I was absolutely hooked on going to the national conferences. I've gone to almost every year since then. I've missed a couple, but I don't miss many. There's a lot of things that I love about being at that conference. I love seeing people that I only get to see maybe once or twice a year. And I love getting the education, finding out the cutting edge information that's out there for my profession. I can't recommend to you enough how important it is for you to go to this kind of conference. Having a great conference starts well before you touch down on the plane to the conference city. You want to start well before the conference. You want to make sure that you register early, take advantage of any early bird discounts that might be available. And when you're looking at the topics, that's going to help you decide what conference you want to go to. Two, it's going to help you decide what topics during that conference you're going to want to go see. Now, some of you are going to have must-see topics, things that you absolutely want to see while you're there. Now, the bad news is sometimes these sessions fill up. So you got to be really sure what topics you want to see and understand that the sessions fill up, especially with the popular speakers. So if you have a topic that you absolutely have to see, you're going to have to get there early. Do a little research on the topics you're interested in. This is going to help you ask better questions and have a deeper understanding when you get there. So that's really important to do. One advice I'll tell you that before the conference, you want to get the conference app if there's one available. So for the conference that I'm going to upcoming, they have an app. And the cool thing about the app for this particular conference that I'm going to, it puts the conference at your fingertips. Everything's there. The speaker bios, the topics, the schedule, what vendors are there. All the information's right there at your phone. That makes it so convenient and so easy to navigate. Let's talk about during the conference. During the conference, be present. Be there at the conference. Pay attention. Turn off your phone. Unplug for a little while. Try to forget about work if you have the luxury of being able to do that. And really focus on getting some education. Use things like conference hashtags to tag the conference on your social media and let your folks know that you're there. It's a good way to let your friends know that you're going to be there. If you have friends from out of state that maybe they're going to be there too, they give you a chance to know that you're there and maybe meet up. One of the things I like to do, I like to check into the different presentations so that people know what topics I seen while I was there. That way, if it sparks a conversation on my social media, I can go back with the information that I got during that conference. Now, that means you got to really pay attention so you can bring that information back to your peers. Speaking of your peers, one of the things I really like to do is I like to share key take-home points that I learn in these different conferences. My friend Nisa from the Q Word podcast, she does this better than almost anyone I know. She shares the golden little nuggets that she gets in her podcast, and she shares it so that her friends back home can play along with her and see what exactly is going on at that conference. One of the most important things you can do while you're at a conference, again, if you're going to be there with 2,000 to 3,000 of your peers, one of the things you really want to do is really focus on networking. Now, Networking, when I say networking, that may make you feel a little weird, but what I want you to do is I want you to meet people in your industry from all over the world. And this is a great place to do this. This is an international conference, and there's people from all over the world. So if you have business cards, bring your business cards. Bring a stack, take them with you. That way you have a way to give something, a little takeaway to help encourage follow-up down the road. Know a little bit about your ED. If you're a trauma center, are you a community hospital, or your tertiary care center? One of the things that we have in common is that we all work in the emergency department, all the people who are there. So sometimes they're going to ask you questions about your department. They're looking for those connections to see how much your experience is like their experience. So that's going to be one of the popular questions is they're going to ask, how big is your ED? How many visits do you have? What kind of patients do you see? Best advice I can give you in networking is be a good listener. Good listeners make good networkers. If you're going to listen to folks and hear what they have to say, don't just pause and wait for your turn to talk. You actually got to listen. This conference is a who's who of the emergency nursing world. You're going to meet authors, speakers, thought leaders, from all over the world. If you're not active in your state and chapter ENA group, then reach out to the leaders and see who's going to go. Most of the time, the chapter leaders are there because they're there for the business meeting anyway. So it's a good time for you to connect with your local folks as well, and you'll find out that you have somebody there in your town. Reach out to the leaders, and they'll tell you who's going to be there. Let's talk about the vendor hall. In the vendor hall, you're going to get a chance to see products designed specifically for emergency nursing. These are companies that are targeting people just like you. These are products and services that they want to get into your emergency department. So one of the things you can do is when you're in the conference, definitely take some time to meet with the vendors. Go booth to booth, and there's a lot of them. It's overwhelming sometimes. Go booth to booth, and don't just pick up their little gadgets and gadgets and pick up their pens, but actually meet with the vendors. Talk to them. The vendors are the key to success for most of these conferences. Especially your little conferences back home, these guys are what helps pay those bills. Listen to what the vendors are selling. Take a listen, see what they have. Listen to their pitch. And see if that's something that you can bring, a product or service that you need to bring back to your emergency department leadership. My friend Sarah gave me a great tip for conferences when she said, spend time with the poster presentations. This is a great place where you can get ideas that'll make your ED better. Take a look at the posters. This is research that EDs are doing to try to make the patient care experience better, try to make the nursing experience better. Take a look at what they're doing and see what innovative ideas you can take back home to your ED. You'll be surprised what you can pick up. One of the things I like to do is I like to take a picture with my phone, and then that gives me an opportunity to, get a quick snapshot that I can then take back and share with my peers. But what you'll see on that poster is you'll see the contact information for the authors. So if there's a study or a project that somebody did that is of interest of you, reach out to that author, talk to them about it, ask them for a little bit more information. Ask them how best they can implement that process. How did they implement that process? And you can adapt to how you might be able to implement that into your experience. Now, after the conference, one of the things you should be doing is following up with anyone that you said you'd follow up with, whether that was to share policies, share information, or maybe just connect with somebody on social media. Look for friends, look for ER nurses around the world. One of the best things about this conference is you're going to meet people from all over the world. Keep in touch with them. That way you have somebody on the other side of the country that you can bounce ideas off of if you need to. It's a great way to expand the reach of your emergency department and your social network. Now, I can't let you go without giving you a little bit of just practical advice. Some of the practical advice you need to hear while getting ready for the conference is, first thing I'll tell you is conference rooms always have two settings. They're either too hot or they're too cold. So what I'll tell you is, well, you're in Austin, it's going to be warm this time of year, but don't assume that the conference hall is going to be warm. Have a light sweater or a jacket, something, especially if you tend to run a little bit cool. That is going to be invaluable. Bring that with you, have it there, have it ready to go. Or heck, you can probably just pick one up there if you need to. Definitely wear comfortable shoes. Chances are that you're going to be doing some walking from class to class and maybe even after the events, before the events, to and from the convention center. Comfortable shoes are a must. They are the most critical thing you can wear. You got to wear comfortable shoes. Heck, you're in Texas, so bring your cowboy boots. Let's see those cowboy boots, okay? I'll be wearing mine. Now, other advice. Sit next to someone you don't know. Sit next to someone you don't know and strike up a conversation. Some possible conversation starters. You hate Mondays, right? I hate Mondays. You hate Mondays? Oh, yeah. Frequent flyers? Oh, you got frequent flyers too? Wow, me too. We have that in our ED too. You're going to find, again, talk to some of the issues you have in your ER. And my guess is maybe they've solved that issue or maybe they have that issue too. But definitely share your information. Sit next to somebody you don't know. Don't let anybody eat lunch alone. Okay? We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Another great conversation starter. What's your favorite podcast? You can share yours. Definitely do that for me. If you do, I'd really appreciate it. All right. Now, I got to tell you about my first conference. In my first conference, I was with a group of people that were a little bit older than me. One particular lunchtime, they were all planning to go back to the hotel and take a nap. They were like, yeah, we're done. We're cooked. We've seen everything we want to see. We're done. And I was like a kid in a candy store. I was at my first conference and I wanted to meet everybody. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to do as much as I could. So what I ended up doing is instead of eating lunch alone, I ended up following a group of people from the conference to a lunch spot. Well, it turned out to be a group from Pennsylvania. They were super welcoming. They were so nice and kind and just brought me right into their group. And then we just got to hang out and it was all like we were old friends. Definite shout out to my friend Michelle. Michelle was so kind and so sweet. So every conference since then, I always look for her. She's one of the few people I look for. And each time I see her, it's like we're old friends that we haven't seen each other. We may not have talked to each other much over the last year, but every single time I'm looking for her because I know she's going to be at the conference and I know I'm going to be there and it's going to be great to see her. Now I got a little challenge for you. In the vendor hall, I want you to do something. I want you to look through the vendor hall and I want you to find a product or a service that your department needs. You're going to find out that information and bring that back to your boss. Bring that back to your boss, share that information, let them know about the product, why you need the product, how the product works. You can get an idea, a lot of times the idea for the cost of the product, but get as much of the information as you can done. Doing this footwork increases the odds that product's actually going to end up in your emergency department. So again, this is a great place to find out new cutting edge toys, gadgets, goodies. You're going to find all that in that vendor hall. So find something that you need specifically for your department. That's my challenge for you. Another challenge I have for you is I want you to interact with the speakers. Nothing makes the speakers feel better than when you go up and talk to them after the conference. Now, if they're in a big hurry and they're running from set to set, then that may be one thing. But try to get a chance to go up and see the speakers. Go up and say hello. Let them know what you liked about their conversation. If you've done a little research beforehand, like I told you when I said to look at eyeball the topics and see what's coming out. If you've done a little research beforehand, ask your questions. This is a great time to ask really good, pointed questions that you can get from the experts of the emergency nursing community. So definitely go up and talk to the speakers after their talk. And the other thing I'm going to challenge you to do is I'm going to challenge you to take a selfie with one of the speakers. You never know. This could end up being your next new friend. So definitely meet those guys and say hello. Now, like I said, it's been since 2009 since I went to my first conference. By now, I'm an old hand at conferences. Been to more conferences than I can count. Again, every time I enjoy it. But because it's been a while for me, I wanted to enlist some help from a friend of mine. Shannen Kane is a brand new emergency nurse who's jumped in with both feet. She's the 2019 Emerging Professional Liaison to the National Emergency Nursing Board Shannen has been a nurse just over a year, and she's already gone to an emergency nursing conference, presented at an emergency nursing conference, and on the day that we talked, she had just completed her CEN exam. She's someone you need to watch out for. This girl's going places. I asked Shannen to share some of her advice on how to, again, get the most out of the conference. Take it away, Shannen. So what was your experience for your first conference? What advice would you have for people going to the conference for the first time?
Yeah, so I think having a plan is really important, like looking at the lectures and knowing like what your top, maybe 5 sessions that you really want to go to are. But then also not being afraid to stray away from that, because I'm a planner. So I was like, these are what I want to go to. This is what I'm going to do. But then when you get to conference, you might meet somebody and want to go to a session and network some more with them. And I think it's important to be flexible, but also have kind of a loose plan in mind.
Yeah.
And then also socializing. Like, I think networking happens at the times that we least expect it, like in between sessions and even after the day's over, when people go out to dinner and go out for drinks. And that's when I think the true networking happens. So not just like going to the conference and then going back to your hotel room. I think it's important to like stay out and, talk to people and really like network and connect with people, because you're going to have people from everywhere, all over the world there, who are all experts and doing different things in whatever field it is. So I think the networking aspect is huge. And then like on top of that, I think having a buddy when it's your first conference is important, because if you have a buddy to tag along with, it makes the networking and socializing and the whole craziness of conference a little bit easier to handle. So if there's like somebody that you're from work or, that has similar interests to you that you're going with, I think tagging along and staying together is helpful.
Absolutely.
And then social media is really important. I think documenting what you're doing at conference, that you're there, like cool things you've seen, and then adding people that you've met on social media, even though like, they may be from, across the country from you. I think the best ways that we stay in touch is through social media. And that's how a lot of our networking happens now too.
The cool thing about conferences, there's people that I'll see at conference in Austin that, I see, once maybe twice if I'm lucky a year. And it's, but it's every time it's like, we're old friends. We do the same, we do the same thing. We have the same job. And
right.
you find out that whether you're in California or North Carolina, you find out that, that ERs are all kind of the same. They all have kind of the same problems. They all, Mondays suck, whether you're in, Houston or Montreal, it's about the same. You find out that you're about as screwed up as everybody else. So yeah,
it's true.
You find out that every ED in the country has, kind of the same problems.
Right. And I think as a new nurse, it can be intimidating because you're meeting people who may have been nurses for like 20 plus years, or they're in management now, or they're directors, and they're these really cool, successful people. And, I have so many friends now on Facebook that I can connect through social media that I never thought, we would be Facebook friends. So I think like that's just how we stay in touch nowadays. And I think it's really, really cool to just keep in touch that way.
It's kind of a cool thing when you're, I remember when I was a fairly new nurse and I got a Facebook friend request. Well, I guess I wasn't a new nurse then, but I was fairly new, I guess. And I got a Facebook friend request from somebody on the board, and I was like,
yeah.
Yeah,
awesome.
it's kind of cool. You're like that's kind of cool.
Another thing that I think is really helpful, because I know we get so many business cards while we're at conference, is to either store your business cards in your badge or like take pictures of them and like make notes on them of who that person was and what you talked about. Because like you'll be in the moment having a really awesome conversation and you'll be like, oh, I have to email that person, and then the business card gets lost, or you forget what you talked about. So I try to like keep track of those and just stick them in my badge or take a picture of them. Yeah,
That's a
that
good
was really
idea.
helpful. And then making sure that you meet the candidates too. I don't think people realize how rare of an opportunity it is at conference to be able to be face to face with someone running for the board. So just like going out of your comfort zone, and it can be super intimidating. Like I met you at the conference last year, and I was so intimidated, but you just kind of have to go for it and just strike up a conversation. Think of some questions and just talk to them, because you never know the relationships you can build from that.
I remember one of the first nursing conferences I went to that I spoke at was the CES conference, and I remember being there, and I was speaking on stroke, which I knew fairly well, and had a pretty good presentation on. And as I'm setting up, I realized that the current president of ENA was there, the president-elect was there in the room, as well as Jean Prail. And I remember going, "Oh my God!" Like Jean Prail like wrote the book on emergency nursing, like literally. And it was one of those where I was like, "This is a little bit intimidating." But then I realized that like they were all great. They were all awesome people. They were all great to know.
Mm-hmm.
And they, they were just there kind of getting their learning done the same as I was. So it made it a little less intimidating. It was really cool.
Yeah. And I think it's like they want to talk to us just as much as we want to meet them. And it's just getting past that barrier of being afraid of making that first step. Like I know when I do emerging professional presentations and speeches, and when I went to the student nurses conference, like I wanted to meet as many people as I could there. So I think people forget that like whoever's speaking or whoever candidate it is, they want to meet you just as much as you want to meet them.
Absolutely. They absolutely do. I remember the first time I went to as a delegate for General Assembly, and I remember it was my first time there where I got to see all that happens at the national level, and meet met some of the board members, met people from every state, and it was just awesome, and everybody was so welcoming and so wonderful to just talk to that it was great.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's awesome. That's why I think like going to dinner and going out after conference is such a huge part of being at conference itself, because that's when you're going to meet the people from all over the place, and you meet one person who knows this person, and it just becomes a web of connections and people that and we all have things in common, but yet we have so many different ideas and thoughts
Absolutely.
to bring to the table. So I think that's so important.
I'm really looking. I always look forward to the conference every year. I didn't get a chance to go last year, but every year I really, it's one of the highlights of my year is to get a chance to go to national conference.
And then also another thing I will tell people is definitely attend the opening party. Like I think sometimes if you hadn't been before, it can kind of get blown off like, oh, we don't need to go to that. But ENA has such an amazing opening party, and I know other conferences do too. So definitely like go all in, dress up, like everyone's going to be dressed up, everyone's going to be there. It's not lame. It's really awesome. Definitely go.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And then it's so much fun. And then like for new nurses or nursing students, I would just suggest like having an elevator speech ready to go. Because like people are going to be so excited to meet you and start asking you all of these questions about where you're at in your career and where you want to be and what are your plans. And so I think kind of having a little elevator speech or idea of, what you're looking to get out of conference and kind of a loose idea of what your goals are or what what you're interested in is important. And that way you're able to learn from people and hear from people who might have similar interests or, talk to people about their career paths and help it kind of shape your career path as well. I think that it would be really helpful too.
That's a great idea. Is to I think one of the things you have to do at the conference is, you have to, if you're a kind of an introverted person, you gotta step out of your shell and be ready to talk to folks and tell them about yourself, because they're gonna ask. They're gonna ask, who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? How long have you been doing it? And they're gonna ask you all those questions, and being ready to answer that in kind of a quick, concise manner, and being able to tell them what you want them to know is important.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I'm definitely pretty introverted, so it can be hard for me to do that. And it was hard for me to step out of my comfort zone and talk to a bunch of new people, but it's so worth it. And the more you do it, I think the easier it gets.
Now, you presented at SCLO last year, talking about emerging professionals. How was that experience? How was that experience to get up in front of? Yeah, I remember watching you, and going, okay, here she is, brand new nurse, getting up in front of this room full of state chapter leaders. How intimidating was that?
Yes. It was super intimidating. I was so nervous. But everybody was so supportive, and just, encouraging and motivating, and people were genuinely so interested in hearing like what a new nurse had to say, which I think was really cool and really inspiring for me. And so the more, I could feel the energy from the people in the room, and I felt like the more we shared, people were clapping or had questions or, laughed at our jokes. And I think that really helped me feel more comfortable presenting, because the getting up there at first was so scary, especially as a new nurse. I was like, I have no experience. Like, why do these people want to hear from me? But they genuinely cared about the perspective of a new nurse, and I just think it was just feeling the support from everybody in the room was the best feeling in the world.
So how was it as a new nurse going to your first ENA meeting? Tell me about your first ENA meeting.
So my first meeting was my local chapter meeting, and I went with a buddy. So I had a couple of friends from nursing school that were also going, and so that made it a little bit easier. And I was, my nurse manager was there as well, and I knew him already because I was an ER tech before I became a nurse, so that was more of a comfort for me. But it was really cool to meet people from all the other local hospitals too. I kind of just was quiet and just took it all in, and I kept going back, and I would just keep meeting more people, and eventually, like, now I'm not technically on the board for my chapter, but I help coordinate meetings, and I've helped set up people to come speak. And so and even now, like, getting newer nurses involved and trying to get nursing students and new nurses to the meetings. I just think the more presence we have of new nurses at our meetings, the more people will draw in, and that's kind of been my goal. So it's been rewarding. I mean, that first meeting was intimidating, but I think just like knowing one person that's going, or honestly just showing up and talking to the person sitting next to you, and just kind of, you can in your head make that person your buddy. It makes it a little bit less scary. So if you're not a super extroverted person, I think just, okay, you're going to go and you're going to talk to the person sitting next to you, and you might hit it off, you might not, but that can be like your point person. That's kind of what I do when I'm the only person there. I don't really know anybody. It's intimidating. I'm not like, the person that goes around and talks to everybody in the room, but, you can just feel the room out and find that one person. And even if you only make one good connection at a meeting, that could be really influential and powerful. So I think that's not a bad thing. It's always a good thing, even if it's just one person.
Every time I go, I meet new people from all over the place, and you never know who's going to be a great contact if you need it. So, and you never know who's got,
right.
Oftentimes, we say we kind of have the same problems. We kind of have the same issues. Oftentimes, one hospital may have something figured out that your hospital's struggling with, and vice versa. Your hospital may have figured out something that they're struggling with. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what location. There's, everyone's got their own struggles. I remember being at the conference and hearing a a presentation from an Ivy League school hospital that was, some one that you would think would be like way ahead of the curve. And I remember them doing a presentation on how having dedicated charge nurses changed their department. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, holy cow, we did that 20 years ago. And I'm like, you guys are really just figuring this out, but it's just not something that they did. And then when they did it, they were like, okay, this makes sense. I see why everyone else has done this. And, you're like, well, that's kind of cool. You get to see the difference all across the country. And now with our international members being more prevalent, we can find out from people, we can learn from people all over the world.
Absolutely. Me and you have had some interesting conversations just about how different the flow in our department is and how different our healthcare systems are. And it's interesting to hear, I'll say something that I think is just a common occurrence across everywhere. And then he'll be like, what are you talking about? And we'll just have a conversation about it. And it's just it's interesting to get everybody's perspectives, because we do all face the same issues or similar issues, but we handle them slightly differently. And if we can just collaborate better and share our ideas, and we can learn so much from each other that way.
Absolutely. So what are you looking forward to most for Austin coming up?
Oh, wow. I am most looking forward to, I think, General Assembly. I didn't go to General Assembly last year, and so I'm really excited about all of the resolutions we have and all of the ideas that our members have brought to the table and are advocating for. And so I think it will be really cool to see everything that everyone's been working on, and to just be able to hear all of the ideas and how we can use ENA to make our emergency nurses, careers better and have more resources. And I'm just really excited for that.
So if you're going to be at General Assembly, I'm going to challenge you to do something. So
okay.
One of the General Assemblies I went to, I was the only, it was actually at state chapter leaders. I was the only person there from my state. There was just me. So, my state,
oh, wow.
The rest of the leadership couldn't come. So they were like, well, go make new friends. And I'd been at ENA long enough that I had plenty of friends from all over the place anyway. But I went at that meeting and I made it a goal to take a selfie with somebody from every state. So I'm going to challenge you during General Assembly and during the conference. I'm going to challenge you to take a picture with somebody from every state while you're there. Do you think you can do it?
Okay.
You're introverted. This is the perfect challenge for you.
Yeah, I like it. No, I think that's awesome. I'm going to definitely
hard work.
Try and do that.
Yeah. I think you can do it. So I did it one year, and then I challenged Elaine from Texas to do it the next year that I wasn't there. And she did it. And I think this year it's your turn.
Okay.
All right.
I'm up for the challenge.
We'll check back. We'll check back during the conference and see how it goes. And I'll be watching your social media, see how you do. Well, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to me. I really appreciate that. And what I want to do is figure out a time that we can get you on the podcast again, bring you through the typical questions I have. I'd like to hear a new nurse's perspective on what you've seen so far.
Yeah, I would love to do that. That would be awesome.
So let's figure out a time. We'll talk during the conference, and maybe just after Austin, we can figure out a time that we can get you on the phone again.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
That'd be a lot of fun. Talk to you soon. You too, and congratulations on your CEN again.
Thank you so much.
All right, that about wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I want to thank Shannen for jumping in and joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate your input. I'm looking forward to seeing you at Austin later this week. To all my friends at EN19 and at General Assembly, I'm looking forward to seeing you and hanging out with you for the week. For those of you I don't know, I'd love to meet you. Please, if you see me, say hello, come by, tell me if you're listening to the show, and take a picture with me. I'm gonna light up the show's Instagram feed with some pictures from EN19. So if you're not already following me on Instagram, now's a good time to do it. Follow the Art of Emergency Nursing on Instagram. I'll put the link in the show notes. I'm also going to put the link to Shannen's social media accounts in the show notes as well. So we'll see you in Austin.